Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel. I kindly ask those of you who haven't subscribed yet to go ahead and subscribe. Please leave a like if you enjoy the content, share it, and feel free to use the comment section as always. Today we are going to discuss this case involving the beggar who was beaten up by his personal trainer. Typically, I don't comment on current affairs and common occurrences like this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I believe that there are many channels out there that are more qualified and do an excellent job at this. I personally prefer being more of a spectator rather than a producer of this kind of content. Secondly, the most apparent reason is that inspiration won't always be present, and I may not always have something valuable to contribute to the community. As I've mentioned before, creating content in most cases is much more about having the right inspiration than simply putting in hard work. In other words, you really need to feel inspired to discuss a topic unless it's important to remember that books have themes to analyze and you must digest and absorb them to bring something interesting. I don't often create this type of content, the kind that talks about recent events or trends. For instance, take the case of Arthur or Val. I didn't really find anything unique to add to the conversation that other creators hadn't already covered, and there are other incidents that occur like that too. However, this particular situation involving the beggar struck me as a really intriguing topic to think about throughout the day. That's the reason I felt compelled to go ahead and make this video, to share my perspective and insights with you all. Which I've seen in the male sphere, this search for a pattern, people seek answers. I don't know if I'm still trying to map this out, if this is the result of dialectics, positivism. I see this a lot here in Brazil. This question of when a fact happens, people want a logical answer to absurd things, or that such a theory has been overturned, right? And so the first thing that has to be said here, some comments which I'm talking about here now are a minority. Okay? When I say minority, I mean less than 1%. I have all the metrics here on YouTube and other platforms. It is somewhat straightforward to identify those who genuinely are interested in what I have to say about the case or what other content creators might share. And then there are those who are just trying to stir up trouble and don't like a specific theory. These individuals are a total minority, and they will attempt to argue that the black pill theory has fallen apart. So let's get started. First of all, in 100% of the cases involving this type of comment, they originate from a straw man argument, which is known as the straw man fallacy. I believe most people are familiar with what it is, but just in case someone isn't, the scarecrow fallacy occurs when you refute your opponent by creating and refuting his argument yourself. When I and the theory of appearance brought these materials together in September 2021, we didn't know each other. Many think I'm the theory of appearance, but no, I can't edit videos. I have a good relationship with the channel's owner. We began discussing topics rarely mentioned in Brazil's macho sphere, but already abroad. Here it was all about money, how much, etc. Women like money, you name it. It was really focused on introducing this biological element here. As a result, we eventually got to know one another following the video I created about male beauty. However, by September, I had already begun to promote it. I was preparing a video like this and the community received it very well. It's a video with more than 100,000 views with good feedback. People understood the message, even though it can be a bit painful. People understood it well. I was very happy with the performance of this video and its reception by the community. So it created a lot of people started talking about it afterwards. There's no problem with that. A lot of things that I say here that other producers say came from Hakun. Sometimes I get something from Coruja, Epifania, Tiago Pedigao, Junior, Miguel, you name it. Here we are, the community. It's a sharing of knowledge. You'll never see me wanting to claim credit for myself or for the theory of appearance for having brought it here to Brazil. No, you understand? So much so that when someone comments here, thanks because of you, everyone only discusses black pill aesthetics, I now say, no my dear, but also give credit to the Appearance Theory channel, which we both started at about the same time anyway. And then we eventually met through a recommendation from one of my subscribers. However, there have always been individuals attempting to discredit this theory using straw man arguments. As much as you have very interesting points that get around, and I recognize it, I've even made a video of them talking about this. Biological short-term get around like men who generate strong emotions, or some moments, or regionalization, as Epiphany brings up very well, in short. You have several because we are biopsychosocial beings, and what I did there brings out this biological side even more. Yet, some people still use the scarecrow argument. Basically, some guys are just really dull, The guys don't contribute anything new, they don't offer any unique perspective to the argument. It's just that little bit of anger, that constant nitpicking, and so on. In other words, they lack the ability to construct a comprehensive argument and introduce something novel to the community. For instance, I've already admitted several times here that in my initial videos I exaggerated the topic of women's winter. I realized this during the first live session I had with Knut, In some of my initial videos, I really exaggerated the sad outcomes for the women there. I came to understand that there was a bit of overstatement. The theory about the beginning and middle was solid, but the ending had a melodramatic tone that didn't quite fit. Men's winters are significantly harsher, while women's winters are milder. Ours is like a Siberian winter, as I mentioned before. But there are some guys out there who like to try and hunt things down, and obviously there's going to be another comment here. There already has been about 4 or 5 comments so far. Well, during the day it should come up in other producers as well, talking about, oh, trunks or whatever. Owl also talked about biology and stuff. The appearance theory fell apart, talking about that is the scare argument that the guy with the personal there who doesn't know what happened there, a personal from Brasilia, he took his wife with a beggar, you know. Speaking of that, Shad was betrayed. Well, let's assume I mentioned the gathering of these people, which I haven't. I never discussed appearance theory, real attraction, male beauty, shape, face, or height for long-term relationships. It's always been about finding the balance in casual relationships, which I'll be discussing here throughout this video. I've mentioned it countless times, but I'll repeat it once more, alright? So it was never about advocating for long-term relationships. Even if I had said something like, Shad never gets laid or Shad always excels in a relationship, this argument from people, let's imagine I had said that as they claim I did, or appearance theory or another channel or Koruja suggested, that for the long-term biology, Shad always wins. We've never actually said that, but let's just suppose for a moment that we had. People would already be mistaken about the initial premise because the individual who is betrayed isn't Shad. Black pill is indeed largely based on the principle that facial features, facial beauty and height are more important than the body shape. The shape serves as a complement to the final finish, to the extent that I tell you here that the shape is exactly so you can have easier access to casual relationships with medium-sized butts. I've said this a million times here, you know. So it's much more about balancing the game a bit than about Marina. This channel, which is actually my channel, is a very fatalistic channel for those of you who fall into it. This isn't a conservative channel, okay? It's not a channel that's trying to restore anything. This is fatalism towards the abyss and development in the micro-sun, macro democracy society, gynocentric. It's all gone to shit here, okay? So here, even if it were true, which I've never said, and I'll never say because it doesn't make any sense, Charles will get screwed in the long run. This guy who was betrayed isn't Charles. His face looks like that moon horse who used to attack Palmeiras over there. You think I'm exaggerating? Because the man Koruja made a very good video about this, about the men's market. The guy, he thinks he's a 7, but the women think he's a 3 or 4. Do you think I'm exaggerating? Take a photo of his face and send it to the women who are sisters you know and ask for a sincere note. What is a shared? A shared is unanimous female opinion. Caio Castro, every woman thinks Caio Castro is handsome. So it's like that. It's that guy who's unanimous, you know. There's bound to be 1 or 2 people who will have a hard time saying that they don't think he's handsome. But those who are 99% think it's beautiful. So Shad, he's unanimous. So take the face of this guy who's been betrayed and show it to any of your acquaintances and you'll see that none of them think he's handsome, you know. That guy has a really nice shape, you know, he's quite beautiful and everything. And his personal trainer seems to be doing a good job. He might have a certain status, perhaps he does. I'm not entirely sure because I didn't delve into that aspect in detail. However, if I were to say, which I must clarify, I've never actually said, that alone would cancel it out. But the mindset of these people who believe that Black Pill has fallen apart is quite different. We're discussing the topic of long-term relationships here. And what I find funny is that those who don't agree with Black Pill don't agree because they think that it's money that wins out over beauty. So if there's a guy who looks like Jabba there, Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars there, and there's a Ferrari on their head, that guy is going to get all the most wonderful blondes and brunettes in Brazil. So that's what these guys think. If you have a Ferrari that can weigh 200 kilos, all the women have panties on the floor for you. So the guys travel at a level of mayonnaise that can't even be described. So they cheat with the beggar precisely to disprove themselves that they actually believe that money wins out over the supposed beauty that this guy doesn't have. He's a norm guy being very generous. He's a norm guy, right, Norm? Sub -5 would be an exaggeration. He's a normal guy, you know, he's got nothing much. Well, his face, a guy like Ian Somerhalder or Justin Bieber, or some anonymous people you see on Omegle because they have a very pretty face, they can have thin arms, they don't need to have a shape. The face will always win over the shape. It's just that the shape, as it's something very rare, especially here in Brazil, where there's a lot of overweight, obese, fake thin, etc., ends up standing out for short-term relationships. I've said this a million times. It got a bit long just for this introduction to the scarecrow argument because it needs to be said. Because there will be comments like, I've never said that, Teoria de Apariencia has never said that, and other Coruja producers too. Nobody has ever said anything about dating and that Shad isn't cheated on. In the long run, there's this genuine attraction, and the guy gets older, the woman is modern, she'll do anything. In short, another contradiction with these people who keep trying to find patterns to explain things, right? Right? Yeah, they keep on trying to discover the perfect theory. And they themselves mention that modern women have high expectations for everything, and it's Lialita, you must always expect the worst because it's unpredictable. And then something as crazy as this happens, because this is really crazy, right? Even though we, especially the Hipophania here in Rio de Janeiro, are accustomed to a lot of bestiality, this still manages to shock everyone, doesn't it? It's truly a bizarre thing, isn't it? What exactly happened? You notice that there are hidden elements within it, and realize that it was indeed a cult. Metaphysical or something similar, another topic I've discussed for a while. I made a video about it last week about women flirting with this idea, etc. So you can expect anything. In my video, I'm clear there's a part where I talk about fatalism and dating decisions. I also acknowledge that only 5 to 10% of relationships are functional. At most 10%. This guy's relationship definitely wasn't, so I don't think that's true. I don't preach or recommend you to my subscribers. Now, using the friendship I have with Davi, I'm going to use Davi's phrase of what is a life that I think is very good. I don't treat my subscribers like clients. Here I do, even though I may say some things that will hurt some people. Here it's a friendly relationship. Here I answer. I read most of the comments. I interact with you. I'm never going to say date at home. And even though I recognize that there are relationships and exceptions, because it's quite messed up if I tell over 40,000 people who could potentially benefit from some of the advice I share here for life, to tell these individuals to enter into a relationship knowing that they have a 90% chance of their parachute not deploying when they take the leap, whether it's due to a divorce, having a child, dealing with a mortgage, or any other reason you can think of. There are numerous factors that contribute to making relationships dysfunctional. So these individuals who are attempting to challenge Black Pill or seek a reason behind this, along with many others, are on an endless quest for the standard. It's an ongoing pursuit of a pattern. They notice that society has its dysfunctions and wonder, what do women actually prefer? Well, a woman might cheat on a man who, as I mentioned before, isn't a shidi, right? And even if he were, what if he were a shadrank? I must emphasize again, I never mentioned anything about a long-term relationship. Appearance theory, the guys irritated him so much that he had to post explaining, oh, this is an appearance theory channel for genuine attraction, not for long-term relationships. Check the appearance theory community tab, you'll find his post. The guys got annoyed. He's a handsome friend of mine. Usually the guy grows bigger. Like I said, men, Kuruja made a great video about this. Men have no clue how much they're attracted to. There's this guy out there, and he's a grade 4, but he believes he's more like a grade 7, alright? So he ends up with a girl who's actually a grade 5, yet he goes around telling everyone, hey, I got myself a grade 8. You see, guys, not real men tend to exaggerate everything, especially when it benefits them, alright? And when it comes to putting others down, they minimize it. It turns out that Kuruja, teoria de apariencia, we've never really managed to fully understand or get to grips with this concept of long-term things. So even if the guy was a shad who was betrayed by a beggar, you won't find any content from me, from Kuruja, or from the appearance theorists discussing that shad doesn't do well in the long run. What you will find is that during a relationship, there are several videos available and partner channels from places like England, Switzerland, and the United States, such as Tales or Madigan, which explore this topic in detail, or NCL TV, they show how some men are treated in relationships. At the start, the girlfriend is more giving, shows off the guy is more affectionate, etc. But this is short term. We don't know how these couples are now, right? In the medium and long term, everyone risks getting screwed. The point is, when Chad gets screwed, unless it's a bizarre case like this, the guy but usually after a bad relationship, his life continues with many options. Unlike the average man or the sub-5 man, essentially, the typical guy who doesn't have as many opportunities. In the long run, however, everyone faces risks, correct? This includes risks of betrayal, psychological challenges, and misandry clause, right? We've already witnessed Johnny Depp facing issues because of this and so on. Therefore, don't mix up short-term and long-term perspectives, because what is the major bottleneck? What is the significant equation that you have in Brazil today that proves difficult to solve? A lot of single men are being exposed to various stimuli and rewards in the environment, which are sexy women, bikinis, etc. on Instagram all the time. The guys go crazy. Women, they know, I'm not even talking about going on erotic sites or anything like that. But guys who are being exposed, there are a range of women they know from other influencers all the time, and they don't have the slightest access to talking to these women. So men like this, a lot of invisible guys in Brazil today, or others who are having to go to darker seas, lower their standards, Anyway, very few people are going to be able to have casual relationships with GP. GPism is for the few. even though those who do have fewer headaches. It's just that it's a minority who can really deal with it in psychological and even financial terms, which isn't as cheap as you think it is, and men are going wild. So, when discussing shape, Tiffany made a great video about body and shape, highlighting how it's often undervalued and only considered beneficial. This is my only disagreement with the channels, at least for now. If there are more, I'll let you know. I have a great relationship with Tails. Thinking Ape also commented on my channel to congratulate me. Anyway, foreign channels have begun exchanging messages recently. It's very nice. And Wheat Waffles too. There's a rivalry between Wheat Waffles and Tails, but I'm friends with both and like them. In the Macosphere, I'm known as Zepolvinho, for those unaware, okay? So, even if there's Proto who dislikes me, I likely like you, okay? Okay? So I don't have a problem with anyone here. I'm very friendly, right? Yeah, too much, right? But anyway, right? Taking advantage of this good time we're having in the community, the channels integrating, etc. Of course, there will be some differences between channels. I know you all love this Sofoka, but I'm not going to say it. Who doesn't like who here, right? So it ends up that one disagreement I have with these foreign black pill channels is precisely this issue that they're but in the US and England, I believe they often underestimate the shape factor, okay? That's a point where I have a disagreement, okay? So I agree with about 90 to 95% of what Tails says and what Eiffel says, especially Tails. I found Tails videos to be quite spectacular recently. However, I do disagree with Jin and Cell, you know? I truly believe that when it comes to short-term relationships with average women, if a guy already has some attractiveness, like certain facial features and height, and any enhances his shape, he can reach the level of the stasis, those women in the 7th grade range, 7 and then 5 over there, quietly. If the guy already has a pleasant face and a nice height, so with the shape he is able to be with women he could never attract without it. If he did manage to, it would require significant time, energy and money. I emphasize for the 1000th time, this is for short-term relationships. In the long run, my friend, you'll see all kinds of aberrations, women breaking up with you out of the blue, talking about details, falling in love with someone else, some extreme cases, like the case of the beggar, so it ends up that. For the long term, there's no security at all, understand? In the long term, I can't put my hand on Ian Somerhalder or Brad Pitt, there's no way, understand? It's complicated in the long term. Everything happens, I've said it a million times. What I say about male beauties for the short term, find just that in my videos. Okay? So, no theory has been overturned. I also see that there's a very strong need among men. People are very modernettes, feminists, be careful and attack the channel. And they'll come and say, well, gynocentrism, gynocentrism and misandry won't end. Do you understand? This situation is not going to end anytime soon. Brazil ranks among the worst countries in the world when it comes to this issue. So, there's really no point in trying to think that things are going to improve, because they simply aren't. It's heading straight for the abyss. However, the real problem arises when we ourselves begin these pointless and silly arguments. You know what I mean? With these comments and everything, you don't have to agree 100% with Black Pill. You can see more logic, just as we already made a video talking about the issues of strong emotions, psychosocial factors, understanding that nature is in fact futile, no matter how heavy Black Pill is. At the end of the day, I've already had this conversation with Koruja. Koruja has already said it. We see that the business is futile. At the end of the day, this issue of female eugenics, it's just that people want a standard, you know, they desire a standard, they seek perfection, and they sort of want to repair the system. So, come on. I've noticed that people have truly embraced Black Pill. But when a situation like this arises, it's as if aesthetics no longer hold any value. I'm planning to cancel my gym membership tomorrow, deciding never to pursue any woman again, as if men could actually control their own libido. A small minority possess evil cell, so the guys refrain from going, realizing there's no sense in getting frustrated over it because there's quite a bit of bizarreness in this story. And the mistake begins with a man wanting to pursue a long-term relationship in the year 2022 without fully understanding the risks and odds he's taking on. Anyway, you will always come across this type of comment there. Just like when people suggest putting Dom Sandro in politics and all those things, poor Dom Sandro. He has been working brilliantly for many years, and now they want to put him in such a snake's nest, because if there's one thing that both the left and the right despise more than bankers, which is something that both sides really dislike, it's a banker who follows his own path, you know? It's the guy opposing this dinocentric system. They're going to send Don Sando to burn the egg, try to burn a man there. He'll become a piranha and get destroyed by the establishment and this unbeatable system, right? So, what's this? It's a quest for a standard to fix society. People think having money is everything, but then Whindersson Nunes struggles showing money doesn't solve it all. The guy has a lot of money, I'm not sure how much, but his wife is determined to go after him and she's going to mess him up. Oh, the business is really thriving then. So they head over there and see a guy who isn't even a genuine Che, but that's alright. Then the guy gets betrayed by a beggar, which makes having a Che pointless. Where did he go wrong? It's the need to have a girlfriend, you see. Even though the acronym doesn't oppose dating, it clearly states that you're stepping into a roulette game, giving you a 90% probability of getting messed up. Will there be about 10% of lucky individuals who will end up dating alright? Absolutely. The next mistake, the issue of living together, getting married, and having children, involves much more complex matters and everything else similar to what I mentioned about the risks of sleeping together with a casual partner, with a boyfriend, not even considering the legal aspect of a stable union, right? She mentions that obviously you need to be aware of this because Brazil lacks legal certainty, so you must remain vigilant. But there's also the question of attachment. In my personal account of my awakening, I talked about how easy it is to get attached even to a Greca that you don't like so much just for the sake of playing house. Got it? So the few healthy relationships that there are, I see that it's the old-fashioned kind. They usually go out on weekends and everything, and everyone sleeps at home. Everyone has their own life and gets on with it. Even so, it's a total exception. So in this case, if I ask you why the woman cheated, my line of reasoning is a guess that I'm going to give here now. For me, it was strong emotions. Okay. Apart from some schizophrenia, I'm not giving the girl a hard time here. Okay. It's just that you can see that this talk of the occult, etc. I've already told you, women are so hung up on it, okay? And shamanism and occultism and energy, Anyway, there's the question of character. That's an explanation. First of all, we're only going into the field of speculation. There's this question of the occult, of shamanism, of strong emotions, a question of character. Sometimes it's a bad person, a really bad person. It's that story about a huge pizza with 20 pieces on it, and you can also comment on your opinion of why you think she did it. I'm going more along the lines of strong emotions, that women are driven to danger by strong emotions, but I have no way of proving that, okay? I have no way of... People say, what do you think Trunks did? Unfortunately, I wish I had the answer to everything, but I don't. You can't know what went on in her head, but so we can get into the final stretch of the video. It's never been said here by those like me who are propagating materials. More of a black pill about biology and biological fatalism. The idea that this is a long-term certainty. This has never been widely accepted, partly because the hidden ovulation concept that Alexander Grace and Italia da Apparenza discussed, and then Corrugia expertly explained clearly. Shows that women seek attractive men for short-term relationships and look for providers for long-term stability, and sometimes also seek emotional connection. Understand in some cases you want emotion there. So, but hidden ovulation alone, which is more about provision, isn't enough to explain it either. So, it's a complex case, but anyway, it doesn't even disprove the scarecrow itself because the guy isn't Shad. If I'd claimed Shad would maintain the relationship long term, I'd be in trouble, since even if this guy isn't Shad, eventually some big Shad will be betrayed by someone less attractive. But I didn't say that, so neither I, Corrugia, nor the theory of appearance need to worry. And so, a lot of these questions come from a certain lack of wanting an answer to everything. Whether it's producer they like a lot or the producer they don't like so much that they try to refute the guy all the time. There are guys who look for scientism in everything you can imagine. You go and tell the guy, well, women don't find men in Brazil handsome. The guy wants a survey of that. Let me tell you, I have many subscribers from the countryside. Look at how some of these folks handle things. I have plenty of subscribers from small towns with 10, 20, 30, 50,000 residents. Everyone knows each other there. A guy asks his sister in a town of 20,000 people, and she says there are only 3 good-looking guys. Then another guy says, but your sister can't know all 20,000 people. They'd count 10,000 men. Your sister doesn't know the 10,000 men in the city. So they want scientific proof, because in these guys' minds it could be that the most invisible people, who unfortunately are the lower class people, Jesse. Souza, who for me is a brilliant sociologist who explains inequality in Brazil very well, shows how you have a large mass of invisible workers in Brazil. Anyway, their books are absolutely brilliant. They reflect the middle class in short. Regarding the issue of inequality, I believe he explains the matter of the formation of slavery very well, and why Brazil remains such a poor and unequal country. In the minds of those people, the ones who deny it, who stay firm, who sculpt their own identities, there's a lot of invisible and manual labor. In short, there are many peasants working for large companies out there. They lie to themselves. Do you think that if there was a big guy like Michael B. Jordan on the outskirts of Brazil, or a Caio Castro a Cayo Remo, the mob wouldn't know about it. In a small town of 20,000 inhabitants, so the guys use it. Your sister, your friend doesn't know everyone in the city, as if there were a lot of occultists in the queues at the bank, in the lottery queues, on the factory floor. So, everyone, let's end this nonsense, okay? There's no need to demand scientific proof and articles for something obvious, right? Like asking for evidence that the sky is blue, right? Seriously, 2 plus 2 is 4. This reflects a search for standards and a focus on trivialities, right? People really want irrefutable proof for things that are clear, right? Anyway, I notice a lot in this situation many people who genuinely seek a sincere analysis of it. However, there's a small group of people who either dislike the producer or are overly fond of him and demand answers for everything. They seek a flawless answer, expecting a new theory to arise. This theory would suggest that if you do this and that, possess this and that, you won't be betrayed by a beggar. Guys, there's no such thing, especially in the medium and long term these days, right? You're subject to anything, right? So here's the message, a big hug to everyone.